Welcome to qnawire.
All right, in this question, we have three different equations, and for each one, we want to find the oxidation number of all the elements, and then we want to determine the total number of electrons that are being transferred. So let's start with finding our oxidation numbers. I'm going to start with the substances that we know the oxidation of. So for instance, I know oxygen only has three choices for oxidation numbers. If it's all by itself, it's 0. Almost all the rest of the time it's -2, with the exception of if it's in a peroxide, in which case it's -1. So this is just in a regular compound, it's going to be -2. Same thing here, it's going to be -2, and same thing here, it's going to be -2. Iodine here is all by itself, so it's 0. And then the rest I need to solve for. So here I'm going to write a little equation. I don't know iodine, so I'm going to call it X, and there's two of them, plus 5 times the oxidation number of oxygen, which is -2, and the whole thing equals the overall charge, which is 0. So 2x minus 10 equals 0, 2x equals 10, x equals +5. So my oxidation number here is +5. Here I can just kind of look at if oxygen is -2 and there's only one carbon, one oxygen, carbon must be +2. And over here again, you can probably look at that and figure it out, but if you wanted to write the equation, the oxidation number for carbon would be X, plus there are 2 oxygen with an oxidation number of -2, and the overall charge is 0. So X minus 4 equals 0, so X equals +4. All right. So what's changing here? Iodine is changing. It's going from 5 to 0. So it must be gaining 5 electrons, but there's 2 iodine. So overall, it's gaining 5 times 2, or 10 electrons. And then the same thing here, I can look at carbon. Carbon is also changing. Carbon is losing 2 here, but notice the 5 coefficient, so it's losing 2 times 5. It is losing 10 electrons. So my total number of electrons being transferred in this reaction is 10. You don't add them. Transferred means one's losing and one's gaining, so 10 electrons. All right, on the next reaction, mercury here has a charge of +2, so that is its oxidation number. Hydrogen, again, only a few choices for hydrogen. It's either 0 or the rest of the time it's almost always +1. The only exception to that is when it's bonded to a metal. In the case, it's -1. So here it's not bonded to a metal, so it's +1. This is an element all by itself is 0, element all by itself is 0, and here it's just a monatomic ion. It's whatever its charge is, its oxidation number. So I'm going to go back and solve here for the nitrogen. So I have 2 nitrogen, so I'm going to call that 2x, plus 4 times 1 equals, the overall charge is 0. So 2x plus 4 equals 0. 2x equals -4. X equals -2. All right, so I have a -2 here. All right, so let's look what's changing here. Mercury is changing. It is gaining 2 electrons, but going from +2 to 0, but there's times 2, so that's 2 times 2. That is 4 electrons that are being transferred. And let's double check with whatever else is changing. Nitrogen is changing. Okay, it's going from -2 to 0, so it's losing 2 electrons. But again, notice this 2 subscript, so that is also 2 times 2. So that is 4 electrons. So I have 4 electrons being transferred in this reaction. Final reaction. All right, I'm going to go through and put what I know. I know hydrogen is +1, so this must be -2. This is +1. I know oxygen is -2. This is an element all by itself is 0, -2, +1, and -2. All right, then what do I need to solve for? Let's solve for this nitrogen first. So I have x plus 3 times -2 equals, now in this case there is a charge, it's -1, so it's going to equal the charge. So I have x minus 6 equals -1, x equals +5. So my oxidation number here is +5 on this nitrogen. Over here, oxygen is -2, it's there's 1 oxygen, 1 nitrogen, so nitrogen must be +2 in this case. So let's look to see what's changing. All right, it looks like I have sulfur changing from -2 to 0, so that's 2 electrons that it's losing, but notice the coefficient of 3, so that's 2 times 3, That is 6 electrons that sulfur is losing. Now let's make sure something is gaining 6 electrons. And the answer is yes. Here's nitrogen going from +5 to +2. So that's 3 electrons that it's gaining. But the coefficient of 2 is 3 times 2. That is, again, 6 electrons. So I'm transferring 6 electrons in this reaction.